The room pulsed faintly, as though the walls themselves were breathing. Pale blue light glowed from invisible seams, casting long shadows across the crystalline floor. Lucas had decided after an hour of prodding and pacing that his prison was designed by someone who had watched too many minimalist space documentaries. No bed, no table, just a soft square of light where, presumably, one was meant to meditate, contemplate their mistakes, or invent imaginary board games using flakes of dried food paste. He sat now, cross-legged on that square, holding a tiny metallic spoon he'd stolen from the meal tray and nicknamed Captain Shiny. Captain Shiny was currently engaged in a diplomatic mission with a crumb of protein gel, which Lucas had named Ambassador Blob. Things were going well until the door hissed open with a grace that immediately told him the guards were not alone. He stood too quickly and immediately tripped over his own foot, landing in a heap that only slightly bruised his dignity. When he looked up, she was already there. Tall, composed, the very definition of untouchable. Queen Saralindra. Her armor shimmered like ice under moonlight, intricate etchings twisting across the chest plate in a language that looked suspiciously like floral patterns. Her ears tapered elegantly, subtly twitching, and her long golden hair was woven into a braid that would have made a professional stylist weep with envy. She looked like she just stepped off the cover of Galactic Monarch Weekly. Lucas squinted at her. "You again? Let me guess. Here to check if I've figured out how to dig my way out using only sarcasm and protein paste." Her lips, normally still as marble, quirked slightly. Not quite a smile. More like a private acknowledgement that the universe was, in fact, ridiculous. "I've come to observe your condition," she said, her voice cool but not cold. It carried the weight of someone who had commanded fleets and survived solar uprisings, and yet somehow still found time to learn perfect Terran English. Lucas gestured grandly at his surroundings. "Well, as you can see, my condition is largely upright and mildly offended by the lack of coffee." One of the guards, a towering figure in obsidian armor, twitched at the insolence. Saralindra did not react. Instead, she stepped closer, peering at him the way a biologist might study a particularly curious frog. He resisted the urge to croak. "You joke often," she said, as if diagnosing a peculiar disease. "It's a coping mechanism," he replied cheerfully. "Also doubles as entertainment in light of the appalling lack of Wi-Fi in this place." She tilted her head. "You fear me, yet you mock." "I mock everything. It's my superpower." Saralindra moved past the guard and into the cell proper, her armored boots making no sound. She examined the makeshift battlefield of spoon and gel, eyes flicking with interest. Then she looked at him again, her gaze impossibly steady. "I've read your psychological profile. You've lost comrades, endured capture. You should be unstable." "Should be," he agreed, "but I'm stubborn. And honestly, if I lost my mind, who'd keep the Spoon Army in check?" Again, that almost smile. It was unnerving. Not because it was cruel, but because it felt human. Too human. He frowned, something nudging his thoughts. "Why do you keep visiting me anyway? Royal boredom? Some kind of intergalactic Stockholm Syndrome experiment?" For a long moment she said nothing, just watched him. The silence stretched, delicate as spider silk. "I find you—" She paused, not searching for the word but weighing whether she should say it. "Different." Different as in charmingly roguish, or different as in this Terran is broken beyond repair? Her eyes flickered with amusement. "Both." Lucas laughed, a sharp sound in the quiet room. "At least you're honest. Royal honesty. That's gotta be rarer than a clean spoon in this place." She stepped closer, and for a moment, Lucas forgot he was a prisoner. Her presence was something else entirely, like standing too close to a star and realizing it wasn't just light, it was life and heat and power that could burn you down to atoms. But then she ruined the moment. "You dreamed last night," she said. He blinked. "Excuse me?" "You spoke, in your sleep, in a language we cannot decipher." Lucas felt his stomach tighten. "Probably just Earth gibberish, something from an old sitcom." "No," she said more softly now. "It was older, much older." She reached out, and before he could move, her hand brushed against his temple. His skin tingled, not unpleasantly. Her touch was cool, almost reverent. "I've heard it once before," she murmured, "in the Temple of Stars, on a forgotten moon where time is measured in tidal songs." Lucas swallowed. "Right. Definitely not sitcom material then." She withdrew her hand and looked at him again, but this time her gaze held something else, something dangerous and strangely tender. "You are more than you believe," she said. He wanted to laugh, wanted to make another joke, but something about her words stuck in his throat. So instead he said, "That's a very dramatic way to say I talk in my sleep." For the first time, she smiled, a real smile. And just like that, the room didn't feel quite so cold. She turned to go. The guards followed. Lucas sat down again, this time letting his back rest against the smooth wall. He looked at Captain Shiny, then at the empty doorway where the queen had vanished. "You see that?" he muttered to the spoon. "Either she's messing with me or I've just become part of a cosmic soap opera. Honestly, both options are exhausting." He leaned his head back, closed his eyes. Outside, the ship drifted silently through stars that remembered more wars than he ever would. Lucas stared at the transparent wall of his quarters, watching stars drift like lazy fish through the endless black. A drone buzzed past his head, narrowly avoiding collision with his coffee mug, empty as usual. He sighed, glancing over at the maintenance bot that had been hovering for the past 10 minutes, clearly uncertain whether to repair something or arrest him for crimes against conversation. "I'm telling you, if I had a credit for every time I asked for real coffee, I could buy a moon," he said. The bot chirped something in binary, which Lucas decided to interpret as, "You're lucky you're still breathing. Human." "That's fair," he muttered, sipping imaginary coffee and pretending it was anything but the lukewarm botanical horror they called stim tea. Ever since Saralindra had granted him quarters outside the cell block, a gesture he still wasn't sure how to interpret, he'd been kept under observational freedom, which, as far as he could tell, meant being watched by a rotating squad of guards with the emotional range of decorative plants. Still, it beat the spoon wars. A gentle chime rang, followed by the soft whoosh of the door opening. Saralindra entered like a breeze that had read too many leadership manuals. She wore something less armored today, still regal, still impractically elegant, but with flowing patterns that shimmered when she moved. "Am I under arrest?" Lucas asked. "Because I should warn you, I have diplomatic immunity from 5 different intergalactic fast food chains." "You're scheduled for a briefing," she replied, completely unfazed. "I wasn't briefed about a briefing." "Now you are." He stood, stretching with the kind of dramatic flair that only comes from being slightly bored and slightly impressed. "Are you sure you want me there? I might start another galactic incident. Last time I spoke, someone fainted. That was because you insulted the Vantar High Commander's ceremonial mustache." Lucas shrugged. It looked like a sad caterpillar clinging to life. "I was doing him a favor." She led him down a curved corridor, glowing faintly with light that seemed to have a will of its own. Lucas had learned not to ask how the ship worked. Every time he did, someone started explaining gravitational harmonics and quantum veils, and he blacked out from sheer confusion. They entered a chamber that reminded him of an amphitheater, only with more holograms and fewer sweaty politicians. Commanders, ministers, and a few sentient clouds greeted Saralindra with reverence. Lucas gave them a thumbs up, which elicited a flurry of disapproving facial expressions and, from one cloud, a low hum that felt judgmental. Saralindra gestured, and the center of the room lit up with a projection, a star system slowly unraveling, planets blinking out one by one. "This is Halcyon Drift," she said. "A former colony system. Lost contact 3 cycles ago. We intercepted a signal from its inner moon." Lucas squinted at the projection. "That's not a signal. That's a scream." She nodded. "Encrypted, distorted, and ancient. It matches the language you spoke during your dreams." He froze. "Wait, are we talking cosmic deja vu or alien possession? Because I've seen that movie and I die in the first act." "You may have ancestral resonance," she said. "It is rare among Terrans, even rarer among those who make spoon armies." "I'm multi-talented." The council buzzed with disagreement, but Saralindra silenced them with a glance. She turned to Lucas. "You will accompany me." He blinked. To the creepy moon system where planets vanish and space screams happen? Yes. Do I get hazard pay? No. Snacks? Silence. I'll bring my own. The briefing dissolved into preparations, and Lucas was whisked into an outfitting room where a Galadrexian combat suit tried to undress him twice before realizing it was supposed to go on him, not remove his clothes. He spent 10 minutes wrestling with the gloves, which hissed every time he inserted the wrong finger into the wrong slot. Sarah Lindra appeared flawless as ever, as if alien armor obeyed her out of respect rather than design. She said nothing as Lucas struggled to stand without activating his shoulder thrusters. Eventually, they boarded a sleek shuttle shaped like a dagger and smelling faintly of ozone in ancient memories. Lucas buckled in and immediately began touching things. "Don't," Sarah Lindra said without looking. "Touching is part of my process. You will initiate the singularity drive." Touching has concluded. As the ship slipped into FTL, the stars stretched and twisted, becoming threads in a tapestry that no human eyes were ever meant to see. Lucas felt his stomach do a flip, then another flip, then contemplate becoming a black hole out of protest. The silence inside the shuttle was soft and strange. "You're not just taking me because I had a dream, are you?" he asked. "No." "Because I'm charming?" "No." "Because of my latent celestial destiny and boyish good looks?" "Yes." He blinked. "Really?" "No." He laughed, and for a moment so did she. Just a flicker. But it was there. They emerged into orbit over Halcyon Drift, and the sight made Lucas forget every joke he was preparing. The planet below was cracked like a mirror, with lines of molten light running through it like veins. One moon had collapsed entirely, just debris now. The other hovered with unnatural stillness, as if daring them to come closer. "Looks like a vacation spot," Lucas muttered. "You stayed silent for nearly 30 seconds, Sarah Lindra said. "I was concerned." "Don't worry, I was just recalibrating my sarcasm levels." As the ship descended toward the haunted moon, Lucas leaned closer to the window and whispered, "If I die here, I'm blaming you." "I accept responsibility," she said. "Cool, because if I become an immortal space god, I'm also blaming you." She smiled barely. "I accept that as well." They entered the atmosphere in silence, the shuttle cutting through the clouds like a needle through fabric. Below, something ancient stirred, and in the corner of Lucas's mind, a voice, not his, began to whisper. Lucas stepped off the shuttle like a man walking into a haunted antique store, expecting every creak to have a personality and every corner to contain a jump scare with bad breath. The moon's surface stretched before him in an eerie shimmer, like the dust had made a pact with light to confuse the living. Sarah Lindra strode ahead, her long strides unbothered by the gravity fluctuations. Lucas tried to imitate her grace and immediately tripped over what was either a rock or an ancient alien egg. He decided not to find out. "So, this moon," he said, brushing himself off. "Got any fun facts? Like, was it the site of a cosmic wedding? A really intense bake-off? The place the gods came to break up?" "It was a data hub once," Sarah Lindra replied. "Before the collapse. One of the oldest in the sector. No one has been here in over 4 centuries. Then why does it feel like someone vacuumed the history and left behind the static?" She gave him a sideways glance. "Because that is exactly what happened." The facility entrance loomed like the open mouth of a cave that had once swallowed civilizations whole. Lucas approached it like it owed him money. He reached for the panel on the door and was instantly zapped by something that felt suspiciously like sarcasm, made physical. "Friendly neighborhood security system," he muttered, shaking his hand. "Did you bring your universal translator/hacker thingy?" Sarah Lindra reached into a compartment on her armor and pulled out a device that looked like a prism with anger issues. She pressed it against the console. Symbols flared, danced, and then a deep rumble echoed through the ground. The door groaned open, revealing a corridor bathed in a sickly green glow. Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Did you order the horror aesthetic on purpose, or is that just a lucky accident?" They moved cautiously, the air thick with ancient decay and something else. Something that wasn't quite memory, wasn't quite presence. Lucas heard faint whispers, but every time he turned to look, there was nothing. He distracted himself by humming the theme to an old Terran sitcom, though he was fairly certain the ghosts of this place had no appreciation for the Banana Brothers. Inside, the structure was larger than it had any right to be. Halls stretched into curves that defied geometry. The place felt alive, not in the breathing sense, but in the waiting sense. Lucas swore Sarah Lindra appeared, flawless as if alien armor obeyed her out of respect rather than design. She said nothing as Lucas struggled to stand without activating his shoulder thrusters. Eventually, they boarded a sleek shuttle shaped like a dagger and smelling faintly of ozone and ancient memories. Lucas buckled in and immediately began touching things. "Don't," Sarah Lindra said without looking. "Touching is part of my process. You will initiate the singularity drive. Touching has concluded." As the ship slipped into FTL, the stars stretched and twisted, becoming threads in a tapestry that no human eyes were ever meant to see. Lucas felt his stomach do a flip, then another flip, then contemplate becoming a black hole out of protest. The silence inside the shuttle was soft and strange. "You're not just taking me because I had a dream, are you?" he asked. "No." "Because I'm charming?" "No." "Because of my latent celestial destiny and boyish good looks?" "Yes." He blinked. "Really?" "No." He laughed, and for a moment so did she. Just a flicker. But it was there. They emerged into orbit over Halcyon Drift, and the sight made Lucas forget every joke he was preparing. The planet below was cracked like a mirror, with lines of molten light running through it like veins. One moon had collapsed entirely. Just debris now. The other hovered with unnatural stillness, as if daring them to come closer. "Looks like a vacation spot," Lucas muttered. "You stayed silent for nearly 30 seconds, Sarah Lindra said. "I was concerned." "Don't worry, I was just recalibrating my sarcasm levels." As the ship descended toward the haunted moon, Lucas leaned closer to the window and whispered, "If I die here, I'm blaming you." "I accept responsibility," she said. "Cool, because if I become an immortal space god, I'm also blaming you." She smiled barely. "I accept that as well." They entered the atmosphere in silence, the shuttle cutting through the clouds like a needle through fabric. Below, something ancient stirred, and in the corner of Lucas's mind, a voice, not his, began to whisper. Lucas stepped off the shuttle like a man walking into a haunted antique store, expecting every creak to have a personality and every corner to contain a jump scare with bad breath. The moon's surface stretched before him in an eerie shimmer, like the dust had made a pact with light to confuse the living. Sarah Lindra strode ahead, her long strides unbothered by the gravity fluctuations. Lucas tried to imitate her grace and immediately tripped over what was either a rock or an ancient alien egg. He decided not to find out. "So, this moon," he said, brushing himself off. "Got any fun facts? Like, was it the site of a cosmic wedding? A really intense bake-off? The place the gods came to break up?" "It was a data hub once," Sarah Lindra replied. "Before the collapse. One of the oldest in the sector. No one has been here in over 4 centuries. "Then why does it feel like someone vacuumed the history and left behind the static?" She gave him a sideways glance. "Because that is exactly what happened." The facility entrance loomed like the open mouth of a cave that had once swallowed civilizations whole. Lucas approached it like it owed him money. He reached for the panel on the door and was instantly zapped by something that felt suspiciously like sarcasm made physical. "Friendly neighborhood security system," he muttered, shaking his hand. "Did you bring your universal translator/hacker thingy?" Sarah Lindra reached into a compartment on her armor and pulled out a device that looked like a prism with anger issues. She pressed it against the console. Symbols flared, danced, and then a deep rumble echoed through the ground. The door groaned open, revealing a corridor bathed in a sickly green glow. Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Did you order the horror aesthetic on purpose, or is that just a lucky accident?" They moved cautiously, the air thick with ancient decay and something else. Something that wasn't quite memory, wasn't quite presence. Lucas heard faint whispers, but every time he turned to look, there was nothing. He distracted himself by humming the theme to an old Terran sitcom, though he was fairly certain the ghosts of this place had no appreciation for the Banana Brothers. Inside, the structure was larger than it had any right to be. Halls stretched into curves that defied geometry. The place felt alive, not in the breathing sense, but in the waiting sense. Lucas swore. He saw the walls twitch more than once. But when he mentioned it, Saralindra just said, "Spatial constructs are shifting. Maintain equilibrium." That's easy for you to say. You grew up with this stuff. I grew up with gravity that respected personal space. They came to a chamber filled with floating shards of crystal, each one spinning around a central platform. The crystals emitted pulses, not just of light, but of sound. Notes in a pattern Lucas almost recognized. "Music?" he asked. "Data," Saralindra said, "encoded through harmonic vibration. Touch nothing." Naturally, Lucas reached for the nearest shard. It zapped him on contact. "That's what you get," she said. "Curiosity is a noble trait," he muttered, rubbing his hand. "Besides, I think it liked me." The central platform hummed, and suddenly, a figure appeared in a blaze of light. Not a person, a projection. Humanoid, vaguely insectoid, with long limbs and eyes like dying stars. Its voice echoed directly into their minds. "Accessing ancestral link. Verification required." Lucas felt a pull in his chest, a strange tightness just beneath the ribs. The voice wasn't speaking to Saralindra. It was speaking to him. Hi," he offered. "Recognized. Bloodline confirmed. Initiating archival wake." Saralindra turned to him slowly. "You didn't mention your ancestors were architects of a lost moon civilization. I also didn't mention I once tried to train a raccoon to do taxes. We all have secrets." The projection split into dozens of streams, each showing fragments. Starships forming from dust, galaxies bending in ancient rituals, a war fought across the very fabric of time. Lucas saw images of people who looked like him, and others who looked like no one. And one figure stood among them, with ears like Saralindra's, glowing eyes, and a crown made of nebulae. "I think that's your grandmother," he said, pointing. "That is not my grandmother," she said, then paused, though she would have approved of the crown. The vision shifted to show the fall of the drift system, consumed by an entity not of matter or energy, but will. A being of pure hunger that had no name, only intent. The archives referred to it as the undoing. Lucas frowned. "Well, that's cheerful." "They bound it," Saralindra said, pointing at a matrix of energy forming over the cracked planet. "But not destroyed. The binding required one from each of the founding lines. A human, a Delisari, and a void mind." Lucas rubbed his temples. "So you're saying I'm here because I've got old space DNA, and I'm supposed to help rebalance a cosmic prison holding back a nightmare?" "Yes. And the void mind? Extinct." He stared at the glowing chamber. "Convenient." A tremor shook the ground. The crystals cracked. The lights flickered. Something deep below began to stir. "I vote we leave," Lucas said. "I vote we seal it." "That's not mutually exclusive." But Saralindra was already working. Her fingers danced over a console, drawing symbols in the air like a conductor weaving symphonies from fire. Lucas did his best to assist, which mostly involved not touching anything breakable and offering moral support in the form of increasingly panicked sarcasm. Another tremor rocked the structure. A fissure opened in the floor, revealing swirling energy below, black and gold and red, all colors of warning. Lucas leaned in. "Is that the prison?" Saralindra nodded. "Its seal is weakening. We must restore the triad." "And I'm one. You're two. But three." A sudden silence fell, the kind that happens before someone says something they'll regret forever. A shape rose from the energy, a figure, tall, elegant, terrifyingly still. "A void mind," Lucas whispered. "I thought you said they were extinct." "I was wrong," Saralindra said. "Or the universe is laughing at me." The void mind opened its eyes. Lucas waved. "Hi, big fan of not dying. Could we negotiate?" The figure stepped forward and smiled. The void mind's smile was unsettling in the way a calm sea hides a leviathan. Lucas instinctively took a step back and immediately tripped over his own feet, which at this point seemed to be working for the enemy. The figure's voice floated through the chamber, like a melody written by someone who'd never heard of mercy. I have waited, it said, eyes fixed on Lucas with disconcerting precision. The triad is formed. Lucas looked from the void mind to Saralindra, who was clearly trying not to shoot something. I don't want to be rude, he said, but that sentence has the same energy as the feast may begin in a vampire movie. The void mind blinked slowly, like a lizard deciding whether a mouse was worth the trouble. Humor, a novelty, it has been eons. You should see my stand-up, Lucas replied, standing carefully. So, we're a triad now. Great. Team name? Something catchy. The Cosmic Three? Galactic Oddities? Or maybe just, please don't eat me. Saralindra stepped forward. Identify yourself. The void mind tilted its head. I am what remains. You may call me Nairan. That sounds suspiciously like an anagram for Renan, Lucas muttered. Just saying. Nairan raised a hand, and the fissure beneath them stilled, sealing shut as if stitched by invisible thread. The crystals reassembled in midair, their hums softening into harmony. I have remained in stasis, Nairan said, awaiting the awakening of the line of flesh. His eyes flicked to Lucas again. You. Oh, good, Lucas said. That's what I always wanted to be. A walking meat prophecy. Saralindra circled the projection chamber like a prowling cat. Why reveal yourself now? Narn moved without motion. His presence simply shifted, reappearing beside her. Because he was not ready, until now. Lucas rubbed his neck. I feel like I skipped the day in school where they taught how to be a mythological savior without dying. Nairan ignored him. The seal fractures, the undoing tests the bounds. Already its influence seeps through the veil, whispers in the minds of the weak, hunger in the hearts of the desperate. You must complete the rite. Saralindra's voice was ice. And then what? He sacrifices himself while the galaxy applauds? Lucas raised a hand. Can we please vote on that? Nairan turned to him. You are not required to die, but you must choose to live as more than what you are. That's wonderfully vague, Lucas said. Do I get a pamphlet or something? A trial version? Nairan stepped toward him and placed a hand on his chest. Lucas flinched, expecting heat or pain, but instead he felt a strange weightlessness, as if a part of him he'd never noticed was rising to the surface. Visions flooded his mind again. A planet torn by war, a child watching from a cracked window, a queen with golden eyes calling across the stars. And beneath it all, the constant thrum of something immense waking slowly, like a god with a grudge. Lucas staggered. Okay, that was fun. Can we never do that again? The rite has begun, Nairan said. Your memories align with your inheritance. I was hoping for a jetpack. Those come later, Saralindra said dryly. They moved deeper into the moon's interior, following a corridor that warped in strange pulses. Time here wasn't broken, just slightly tipsy. The walls displayed images as they passed, flickering moments from ancient lives, the births and falls of empires, and one very clear depiction of a man that looked exactly like Lucas screaming at a burning sandwich. I don't even remember that, Lucas whispered. You will, Nairan replied. The final chamber opened like a blooming flower made of obsidian. At its center floated a sphere of shimmering black, veins of gold dancing across its surface, like lightning trapped in molasses. The heart of binding, Saralindra said. It needs us, Nairan added. Together. Lucas approached warily. We just touch it, say some ancient words, sing karaoke until it's pleased? Saralindra placed her hand on the sphere. We link, share our essence, will. Nairan followed suit. You must allow it to know you. Lucas looked at them both, sighed, and said, If I explode, I want it known that I never got to see the end of Space Cook's Interstellar Edition. He touched the sphere. Instantly, he was nowhere and everywhere, surrounded by swirling galaxies, echoing laughter, sobs from dying stars, and the heartbeat of something older than creation. It pulled at his thoughts, not to steal them, but to understand. It saw every joke he told to hide fear, every step he took away from pain, and it didn't judge, it simply held. He heard Saralindra's voice not through ears but through memory. "I see you." Then Nairn's. "We are the gate. We are the lock." The sphere pulsed once, twice, then shattered. Lucas fell back, gasping. The fragments of the sphere spun upward, forming a lattice in the air that pulsed with life. The seal was renewed, not through control, but through shared will. Saralindra offered her hand. He took it. Nairn spoke softly. "You have done what was needed. The undoing retreats." "Yeah," Lucas said, still dizzy. "But it's not gone." "No," Nairn agreed. "But neither are we." Lucas groaned. "Great. So I'm officially on cosmic duty. Can I at least get weekends off?" Saralindra smiled. "We'll negotiate." The three of them stood beneath the lattice of light, guardians of something no one else remembered. Lucas looked at the ancient moon and said, "Well, that was a weird Wednesday." And then, for the first time in a long time, he laughed. They returned to the capital moon of Zalari Prime to a hero's welcome. Though Lucas was fairly certain they were just being cheered because he'd accidentally landed their ship on a dignitary's garden and knocked over 3 golden statues. Saralindra called it symbolic disruption of feudal pretension. Lucas called it a bad parking job. Either way, the cheering helped. The Council of Stars convened in the central dome, looking every bit as regal and cranky as a table full of space lords could. Lucas stood in the center with Saralindra beside him, her expression unreadable in that wonderfully terrifying way she had when deciding whether to kiss him or vaporize someone. "You activated the heart of binding," said the first speaker. A crustaceous woman who looked like a coral reef had learned sarcasm. "This changes many things." Lucas cleared his throat. "Yes, starting with my underwear." That experience was, enlightening. There was a silence in the dome that could have turned moons to dust. Then, remarkably, the first speaker snorted. Just once, like a rock cracking. Norn stood behind them, shimmering faintly. His presence had softened since the heart, his edges less void and more melancholic. "The fracture has been sealed," he said, "but not destroyed. The undoing waits, still chained. It may yet return." Lucas folded his arms. "Then we keep watch, we three, the galaxy's weirdest family." "Speak for yourself," Saralindra murmured. "I do, constantly." The council passed their judgment in formal tones and ceremonial phrases that mostly boiled down to, "Thanks for saving reality. Now please don't touch anything important ever again." Lucas promised nothing. In the weeks that followed, Zalari Prime transformed. Where once it had been dominated by paranoia and feuding factions, now there were talks of unity. The great domes opened to interplanetary cultures, and children ran through crystalline streets with alien kites and gravity-defying snacks. One of which bit Lucas. Twice. Saralindra took her place again as queen of the consortium, but things were different. The throne room became less of a command center and more of a gathering place. Music echoed from its high walls. She listened more, smiled more. Once, she even wore mismatched earrings to a royal banquet. Lucas pointed it out. She claimed it was an assassination deterrent. He wasn't convinced. Lucas didn't return to Earth. Not because he couldn't, but because something had shifted. Earth had been where he survived. This was where he lived. He taught flight tactics to rookie pilots, though his lessons often turned into rambling monologues about why ships needed cup holders. He became a folk hero to maintenance workers after rewriting the standard duck-crawling protocol to include snack breaks. And every night, when the stars cast their silver paths across the palace windows, he'd sit beside Saralindra on the eastern balcony, legs swinging like a child's. One evening, as they watched twin moons rise over the sapphire horizon, he nudged her gently. "You remember the first time you saw me? In that cell?" Her lips curled. "You were snoring, loudly. I maintain that was my war cry. You drooled." He grinned. "And yet you fell for me." She didn't answer. Instead, she reached out and brushed a hand through his hair, fingers gentle, lingering. "I prayed," she whispered, "for something that wasn't war. And you came." He tilted his head. "I'm not sure if that makes me a gift or a divine punishment." She rested her head on his shoulder. "Maybe both." In the sky, a ripple shimmered. Nothing dangerous, just a reminder that the galaxy was still alive and wild and ungoverned at its edges. Lucas liked that. It gave the universe a sense of humor. As the night deepened, Saralindra murmured, "Do you regret it?" Lucas didn't answer immediately. He thought about the prison, the escape, the battles, the floating libraries, the sentient elevator that once serenaded them in 9 languages. He thought of Nairn, who had returned to the stars in silence, leaving only a single black feather on their balcony. He thought of the heart of binding, and the moment it had seen him, truly seen him, and had not flinched. "I regret not stealing more of that blue jelly they serve at galactic ceremonies," he said. "But otherwise, nah, I found home." She looked up at him. "With me?" He looked back at her, and for once didn't use a joke to hide the truth. "Yeah," he said, "with you." A soft hum pulsed from the palace's core, a reminder that the heart still listened, still watched. The galaxy would never be safe, but it didn't have to be. It just had to be worth it. Lucas leaned back and kicked his feet up on the railing. "Think we'll get a quiet decade?" Saralindra laughed. "We're due, maybe even 2. And beneath the twin moons of Zalari Prime, a queen and her unlikely consort watched the stars burn with stories not yet told, knowing they had already written one the galaxy would never forget. The third sun had already slumped behind the jagged ridge, leaking a muddy orange across the horizon like a dying ember, when Elias Rowe kicked the broken door off its hinges and muttered, "Permission to enter granted by me. I'll note that in the log." There was no log, of course, just scorched sand, half a canteen of something that claimed to be water, and a growing certainty that everyone else from Bravo 6 was either vaporized or chewing roots in the afterlife. Preferably the former. Elias had never liked most of them. The house, if you could call it that, had once belonged to someone. Now it was a lopsided husk of local alloy and shattered glass. He stepped through what might have been a kitchen, eyeing the walls for scorch marks or claw traces. You learn fast in war zones. Sometimes it's rebels, sometimes it's plasma, and sometimes it's things that don't leave behind much more than a smell and a name whispered with regret. He found the alien girl in the 3rd room. She didn't flinch when he entered, just sat there, cross-legged on a floor layered with ash and sand, her arms around her knees and her eyes staring straight ahead. She looked like a human, almost. If humans had long, sharply tapered ears and skin that shimmered with a bluish iridescence under the dim emergency lights. Her armor, what remained of it, was ceremonial, not military. Decorative gold bands and a cracked chest plate that probably hadn't stopped much of anything. She blinked once at him, then went back to doing absolutely nothing. "Well," Elias said, crouching slowly, "either you're a hallucination, a ghost, or someone who's about as done with this war as I am." She didn't answer. He rubbed his neck, glancing around for signs of a weapon. Nothing but her bare hands. "Right, not much of a talker. That's fine. I've had worse roommates. One guy on Arctis 4 snored like a freight hauler grinding gears through a pile of rusted dreams." Still no reaction. Elias sat down against the wall opposite her, wincing as the motion pulled at his ribs. Cracked, maybe. Certainly bruised. The drop had been hard and the wreckage of the pod still smoked a few clicks behind him. He pulled out a ration bar, sniffed it, winced, and bit off a corner. "You hungry?" This tastes like regret compressed into chewable form. That got a blink. He tossed the other half toward her. She caught it without looking, turning it over in her hands like it might bite back. Then very deliberately, she took a tiny bite. "Progress." Elias leaned back and grinned. "Name's Elias. Not that you care. You can call me whatever you want. Most people go with that guy who won't shut up, but I answer to, hey you, just fine." The wind howled through the open door and the lights flickered. The shelter wasn't going to hold against a full sand blight. He looked at her again. "This your house?" A pause, then a barely perceptible shake of the head. "Mine now, I guess." "Lucky you. You get to be my first guest. I'd offer tea, but all I've got is synthberry concentrate and a cracked mug." Still no reply. They sat in silence for a while after that. The kind of silence that draped itself like a blanket, too heavy and not warm. Elias busied himself by checking his gear. One cracked comm unit, no signal. One half-charged pistol, no extra clips. One wristband with a blinking emergency beacon that hadn't blinked in hours. He tried smacking it. Nothing. Eventually, he glanced at her again. "You're not going to kill me in my sleep, right? I mean, if you are, do it gently. I've had a long day." For the first time, her lips twitched. A tiny, almost smile. It was gone as fast as it came, but Elias felt like he'd won a small battle. When the wind picked up again, he sealed the doorway with a slab of debris and activated the portable thermal field. It sputtered, then cast a weak glow over the room. He unrolled a foil blanket and dropped another beside her. "Not that you need it. You people run cold or hot?" She looked at him, then at the blanket. Her voice, when it came, was soft. "Cold." He blinked. "You speak." "Not often." "Well, consider me honored." She lay down, her back to the wall, the blanket pulled up to her chin. Elias watched her for a moment, then sighed and lay down too, wincing as he stretched out. The storm hit full force within minutes. Dust slammed against the shelter in waves, a sound like fists on the hull of a ship. Elias stared at the flickering ceiling, counting every fourth gust. Then quietly from the other side of the room, "Please, I don't want to be alone tonight." The words hung there, trembling, like a candle flame in a draft. Elias didn't answer immediately. He didn't joke. Just shifted, propped himself up on one elbow, and nodded even though she couldn't see it. "All right," he said softly. "You won't be." A pause, then a breath, then silence again, but different this time. Not heavy, just still. "By the way," he murmured, eyes closed, "I'm a terrible cuddle partner. Elbows everywhere. I make weird noises when I dream. One time I bit a sergeant in my sleep. A soft sound, too quiet to be a laugh, not loud enough to be a sob, floated back to him. And they slept, the human and the alien, beneath a ceiling of flickering light in a sky full of red sand. When Elias woke, the storm had passed, leaving the shelter bathed in an eerie red glow that filtered through the dust-caked viewport. The wind still moaned softly beyond the walls, but it was the quiet kind of moan, the sound of a world exhaling after a tantrum. He rubbed sleep from his eyes and stretched until his joints popped like old hinges. The alien girl, Ilaria he now guessed, though he hadn't dared ask again, was already awake, sitting cross-legged near the wall, holding the empty ration wrapper like it was something sacred or extremely confusing. She looked up when he stirred and tilted her head. "You made a sound like a dying lizard." "That was snoring," Elias said, cracking his neck. "You should hear my happy noises. Much worse." "I'm not sure I want to." "That makes two of us." He pulled on his boots and began poking around the shelter's storage compartments. Most were empty, some sealed, and one contained a family of particularly smug insects that he left alone out of mutual respect. Ilaria stood and watched him with the quiet attentiveness of someone used to studying threats, or possibly prey. He wasn't sure which she thought he was. "You always stare like that?" he asked over his shoulder. "It's efficient." "Terrific. Just what I wanted." Efficiency with a side of judgment. He pried open a rusted drawer and let out a triumphant, "Aha!" She stepped closer. "What is that?" "A tin of roasted bug meat in oil, guaranteed to survive 3 apocalypses and still taste like shoe leather." He popped the lid. The contents wobbled. "Smells like despair." Ilaria sniffed, grimaced, and stepped back. "I'll wait." "Suit yourself. More despair for me." He sat against the wall and chewed mechanically. "You know, if we're going to be roommates for longer than a day, I should probably call you something other than, 'Hey, you.' Got a name?" She hesitated, then very quietly, "Ilaria." "Ilaria," he echoed, nodding. "Fancy. Sounds like you should be wearing silk and judging people from atop a crystal throne." She blinked. "I was an empath of the Eldari High Spire." He choked on his bug meat. "Sorry, what?" She raised an eyebrow. "That was your reaction?" "I just inhale bug meat while picturing you on a throne. You're lucky I didn't die." She tilted her head again. "Are all humans this dramatic?" "Only the interesting ones." They spent the rest of the morning salvaging what they could from nearby ruins. The broken comm unit still sputtered faint signals, mostly static and garbled nonsense. Elias fiddled with it as they walked, chewing a cable like it might help him think. "What's that noise?" Ilaria asked. My brain trying to remember how to repair alien-infused military junk without a manual. I meant the actual noise. Oh, that's just the signal. Or maybe a ghost. Either way, best case scenario, someone hears us. Worst case scenario, we summon a cybernetic wraith programmed to vaporize anything with a pulse. 50-50 odds. Better than usual, she said deadpan. You joke now. Wait until you meet one. Ugly things, all elbows. They arrived at the remains of a structure Elias guessed was once a community center, or a weapons depot with excellent seating. Ilaria wandered ahead, pausing beside a shattered crystalline pillar. Her fingers brushed it gently, reverently. This was my home. He paused, suddenly unsure of what to say. It's good architecture. She turned, arms folded. That's your comfort response? Hey, I didn't blow it up. Silence. Then to his surprise, she smiled faintly. Not personally. He stepped beside her, looking out across the wreckage. My people were told the Eldari left willingly, that this place was a strategic target, not a city. They lied. Yeah, I'm starting to get that. They stood together for a while, the wind kicking up dust around their boots. Elias adjusted the comm unit again, then kicked it when it sparked. It responded with a faint, irregular pulse. Something different. He knelt. Wait, this is a ping. Someone's out there. It's weak, but it's repeating. Ilaria crouched beside him. What kind of signal? Military, human origin. Probably a distress beacon. Could be another crash survivor. Or someone worse. We should go. Elias looked at the ruins, then at her. You sure you're up for this? We don't have to chase ghosts. I've been alone long enough. Let's find out who else survived. He nodded. Right. And if it turns out to be a homicidal AI, I'll let you handle the negotiations. They packed quickly. Elias took the lead, rifle slung over his shoulder, eyes on the blipping display. Ilaria followed, quiet and swift, her gaze always scanning. They moved through canyons of broken metal and melted stone, past half-buried statues and fallen towers that whispered of a civilization erased in a day. At one point, Elias slipped, landing in a pit of wet sand. Ilaria offered a hand, expression unreadable. He took it, grumbling. Remind me again why I signed up for planetary deployment instead of desk duty. You enjoy suffering. No, I enjoy hazard pay. This is not the same thing. They pressed on until the signal grew stronger, pulsing in rhythm now. Elias adjusted the frequency. Suddenly, the device spoke. Distress. Repeating. Coordinates. Virelia 7. This is Lieutenant Wexler of the 3rd drop. Then static. Elias stared at the comm. That's not possible. Ilaria frowned. You know that name. I thought Wexler was dead. He went down in the first wave. The signal repeated, broken but insistent. They looked at each other. Well, Elias said, slinging his rifle tighter, I've never been good at ignoring ghost stories. Neither have I, Ilaria said. The sky above them darkened again, the second sun dipping toward the horizon. And they walked. The valley was a cracked skeleton of once living stone, the kind that had seen oceans and then forgotten them. Elias squinted at the handheld as the signal continued its sluggish pulse. He slapped it twice, once for good luck, once because violence was sometimes a technician's best friend, and muttered, Still pinging. Still weird. I've had more honest signals from vending machines. Ilaria trailed behind him, silent but watchful, her elongated ears twitching subtly at every shift in the wind. Vending machines talk where you're from? They complain when you kick them. So yes. Sounds like a fragile species. You have no idea. He ducked under a slab of crumbled wall, his boots crunching over fine blue sand. We invented 5 ways to kill a planet before we figured out how to slice bread in zero gravity. She frowned. What's bread? He stopped. Wait, you don't have bread. We have nutrient paste and festival cakes. Elias placed a hand dramatically over his heart. I'm so sorry for your people. They kept walking, following the rhythm of the signal as it pulsed like a sluggish heartbeat. The terrain twisted inward, like a wound in the planet's surface. and the sky overhead blurred into a burnt lavender haze. Ilaria's eyes scanned the distance, always alert. "You're a lot more jumpy today," Elias said. "There are old things beneath this rock, things that don't care about politics or species." "Great. I was just starting to get bored." The signal led them to a ravine where the remains of a dropship had embedded itself in the canyon wall like a broken tooth. Elias knelt beside the jagged entry hatch, brushing away scorched plating. The ship was human tech, all right. Series 9B, standard for planetary insertions. Standard for exploding on impact, too. "I served on one of these during training," Elias muttered. "We called it the flying coffin." "Accurate," Ilaria said, peering inside. They entered slowly, lights dim and flickering. The ship groaned under its own weight, as if protesting their intrusion. Inside, the walls were streaked with soot and moss. The air stank of old metal and something faintly sweet. They moved together in silence, checking each compartment. Elias paused at a locked door near the aft corridor. The signal was strongest here. He tapped the console. No power. Then he looked at Ilaria. She raised a brow. "What? You don't have, like, mystical unlock powers?" "I'm not a vending machine." "Pity." He pulled a power cell from his satchel, jerry-rigged it with 2 wires and a strip of foil gum wrapper, and jammed it into the panel. Sparks flew. The door opened with a hiss of stale air. Inside was a stasis pod. The occupant floated, still alive, though the readouts flickered uncertainly. Elias wiped dust from the control panel. "Lieutenant Wexler, 3rd drop, 213th Recon. Confirmed." Ilaria moved closer. "He's in neural suspension. Dreaming." "Well, he's not snoring like me, so he's got that going for him." Elias studied the system. "Pods like these weren't supposed to be field gear. Someone modified it, a lot." "By who?" "That's the question, isn't it?" Suddenly the lights died, then flickered red. Then an automated voice crackled over the speakers. "Unauthorized access. Breach protocol initiated. Purging sequence commencing in T-." Elias swore and pulled the power cell free. The voice died with a weak sigh. "That's not standard protocol," he muttered. Ilaria's face had gone stiff. "Someone didn't want him found." He turned back to the pod. "And now that we've probably poked a very large bear." "I don't know what that means." "Trust me, it's never good." They rigged a hover pallet and started the slow process of extracting Wexler. Elias did most of the heavy lifting, grumbling about weight distribution and how much he hated hero rescues. Ilaria kept watch at the hatch, eyes locked on the narrowing sky. "Something's moving out there," she said after a while. Elias peered over her shoulder. "That better not be what I think it is." 3 figures emerged from the dust, tall and wrapped in cloaks that shimmered like oil on water. Not human, not Eldari either. They moved too fluidly, their heads too narrow, their steps too deliberate. Each one held a staff that pulsed with internal light. "Friends of yours?" Elias whispered. "Number these are the Watchers." "Watchers of what?" "Silence, memory, secrets." "Lovely, I hate secrets." The Watchers didn't speak. They just stopped, facing the ship, and waited. Elias shifted closer to Ilaria. "Should we, talk to them? Offer cookies?" "They do not eat. They do not sleep. They only act when thresholds are crossed." "And carrying a frozen lieutenant out of a haunted crash site is apparently a threshold?" "Yes, of course it is." One Watcher raised its staff. Energy lanced out, striking the canyon wall beside them and leaving a spiral pattern glowing in the stone. "That was a warning," Ilaria said. "I got that. You think I can bluff them?" "You can try." Elias stepped forward, waving one arm. "Hi there. We're just borrowing our friend. He owes me 20 credits and a really long explanation." The Watchers did not move. He turned to Ilaria. "Maybe they want a dance-off. They want you to leave the body." Elias looked at the pod, then at the Watchers. "Not happening." They raised their staffs in unison. Ilaria stepped in front of him, her voice ringing out clear and strange. "We walk the path of the fallen. This soul is claimed by neither time nor silence. We invoke passage under the compact of Graven." Echo Elias blinked. "That's a thing?" The Watchers hesitated, then lowered their staffs. "That worked?" I wasn't sure it would. I am both impressed and terrified. The watchers turned and faded into the dust, vanishing without a sound. Elias let out a slow breath and looked at the pod. I hope this guy's worth it. Ilaria looked up at the sky. He is the thread that unravels the net. Elias rubbed his face. That means nothing to me. It will. They resumed their journey through the canyon, Wexler floating silently behind them, and the watchers watching from a place no longer visible, but no less close. The outpost was barely more than a glorified storage shed duct-taped to a weather tower, perched like a drunk vulture on the rim of the canyon. It had no name, which Elias claimed was either poetic or deeply suspicious. Inside, the systems whined to life under his haphazard repairs, and everything smelled faintly of burnt copper and regret. The hover pallet carrying Lieutenant Wexler slid into a medbay alcove with a soft hiss, and Elias stepped back, flexing sore shoulders. Okay, nobody exploded. That's our first win today. Ilaria stood at the console, her fingers grazing the interface like it might bite her. He's stable. His vitals are weak but constant. Neural integrity is intact. Well, I'm intact too, Elias said. Mostly. Emotionally frayed maybe. Physically handsome. You have a burnt spot on your hair, and your pants are smoking. He looked down. Fashion's cyclical. Fire retardant chic is going to be big next season. She didn't laugh, but her ears twitched, and that was victory enough. He moved to the far terminal and pulled up the dropship's data log, watching as corrupted files scrolled past in spasms of static. Most of the records were fried, overwritten by something, maybe someone. But one fragment survived, a voice file tagged with Wexler's ID. He hit play, a man's voice raw with fear. No extraction. Repeat, they're not coming back. Something's in the comms. Echoes. We didn't sign up for. If anyone finds this, don't trust. The file ended with a sharp, mechanical screech. Elias leaned back, eyebrows raised. Was that as comforting as it sounded? Ilaria's expression had gone still. Echoes. That's what they called them. The Watchers? Number worse. Elias tapped the screen. We've got a half-frozen soldier with secrets, an ancient species who likes ominous staring, and now these echoes. We're missing just one thing. What? He grinned. A comically underfunded science team with wildly unsafe tech and a bad attitude. A shrill beep cut through the room, and the outer sensors lit up. Movement. Elias frowned and tapped the feed. A blurry shape hovered just beyond the perimeter. A small hover cruiser, clearly damaged, its port nacelle sparking erratically. Ilaria leaned in. That's not Watcher tech. Definitely not. Look, paint job's all wrong. Watchers are all shimmer and doom. This one's more pirate garage sale. The ship landed awkwardly in the outpost courtyard, skidding sideways and bumping into the comms tower, which promptly collapsed with a dismayed groan. Elias winced. Well, there goes long-range contact, again. The hatch opened, and a man in an ill-fitting pressure suit stumbled out, carrying a toolkit bigger than his torso and yelling, "Nobody panic! I'm here to help! I brought wrenches!" Elias blinked. "Oh no, not him. You know him?" "That," Elias said with a sigh, "is Juno Kess, former engineer, current chaos elemental." Juno stomped in, immediately tripping over a loose cable and catching himself on a chair that gave up and collapsed beneath him. "Sup," he said from the floor. "Nice place. Very post-apocalyptic. You redecorating?" "Juno, why are you here?" Elias asked. "Got a distress ping. Yours, I think. Or maybe an old weather boy. Either way, it was more interesting than arguing with Commander Gage about plasma coil etiquette again." Ilaria stared at him like he was a curious disease. "What exactly do you do?" "Everything. Poorly." He stood and dusted himself off. "So, who's the popsicle in your freezer?" "That's Wexler," Elias said. "He's got a neural block and a lot of enemies." "Oh, fun. Let me poke around in his brain." "Absolutely not." But Juno was already pulling tools from his bag. "Come on, I've got the soft touch. Like a surgeon. If surgeons use duct tape and optimism." While he worked, Elias pulled Ilaria aside. "Should we be worried?" "Yes. That's what I thought. Juno plugged in a neural scanner and whistled. Oh, wow. There's a security lattice in here. Military-grade encryption, tied into a dead relay network. Fancy stuff. Can you break it? Elias asked. Juno grinned. Of course. Give me a minute and a questionably legal algorithm. As he tapped away, Elias turned to Ilaria. You okay? She nodded slowly. This place, it's too quiet, as if something's listening. Looked up. Something is. Your ambient energy signature's got a spike. Background noise is oscillating, like a low-frequency echo. Elias looked at him. Say that in a language I speak. There's a noise behind the noise. Something artificial. Something trying to be quiet. Illyria's hand went to her sidearm. Juno. A sudden flicker swept through the outpost lights. Every console blinked. Elias turned to the medpod. Its screens now pulsed with a deep red hue. Wexler's eyes were open. Only, they weren't his. System override, Wexler said in a voice not his own. Identity corrupted. Pattern incomplete. Juno leapt back. Okay, that's not what I ordered. Elias moved forward. Wexler, can you hear me? The voice was flat, mechanical. Wexler is a fragment. Memory vessel. I am the reflection. Ilaria's grip on her weapon tightened. It's an echo. Juno held up both hands. Hi there, reflection. Just so we're clear, we're the friendly kind of intruders. We recycle. We use coasters. Very polite. The pod flickered. Data seeks union. Pattern seeks mirror. Host required. Not it, Elias said immediately. Not it, Juno echoed. Absolutely not, Ilaria said. The lights surged and then everything went black. The darkness lasted 13 seconds. Long enough for Elias to mentally calculate the odds of survival, low, blame Juno, high, and regret not stealing more ration bars. When the lights returned, they were a sickly violet. The outpost groaned like it had just remembered its student loans. Wexler, no, the reflection, hovered inside the medpod, suspended in flickering stasis fields that now pulsed with an eerie rhythm. I don't like this ambiance, Juno muttered. Too much haunted meat locker, not enough friendly galactic cafe. Ilaria stepped forward, ears stiff with tension. Reflection? What do you want? The thing in Wexler's body didn't answer right away. It blinked, mechanical, slow. Then, completion. You brought the key. Elias glanced sideways at Juno, who was currently trying to disable the auto-defense system with a screwdriver and motivational humming. Please don't tell me it means one of us. Not us, Ilaria said. Me. Great, Elias said. That's much worse. The reflection's voice was hollow. She carries the legacy. Pattern echoes pattern. She is the seed. Ilaria flinched. I'm not your seed. I'm not anything to you. Incorrect. Your genome holds the failover sequence. A bridge. We seek continuity. Juno piped up. Okay, so this whole ancient consciousness hitchhiking through space thing? I'd like to formally object, on behalf of everyone who likes their brains unoccupied. Ilaria's hand hovered near her sidearm. I was told I was just a survivor. You were a container, said the reflection. Now you are the key. Elias stepped between them. All right, let's pump the brakes on the cosmic destiny monologue. Ilaria's not plugging into anything unless she wants to. Juno gave him a thumbs up. Consent is cool, even in weird AI horror stories. The reflection twitched. This unit is breaking down. Host degradation imminent. Pattern disintegrating. Good, Elias said. You weren't invited anyway. But Ilaria stepped forward. Number? It's not that simple. If the reflection collapses inside Wexler's mind, it might take him with it. Oh, Elias said. That's worse than I thought. Much worse, Juno added helpfully. I mean, on a scale of mildly inconvenient to cosmic brain scramble, we're at full-blown neural fondue. I can sync with it, Ilaria said softly. Just enough to redirect it. Into the data grid. Contain it there. Elias looked at her. That's dangerous. She smiled slightly. So was talking to you. Didn't stop me then. I'm flattered. And terrified. Juno slid a neural bridge module across the floor with his foot. Well, you've got about 10 minutes before the pod turns him into a toaster, so make it snappy. Ilaria took the device, clipped it to her temple, and stepped up to the interface. As she linked in, Elias grabbed her hand. You don't have to do this. I know, she said, but I want to. Then she was gone, eyes closed, body rigid, breath shallow. Elias watched as the data surged between them, blue light lacing the air like veins of fire. Inside the system, the reflection hissed and shifted, trying to grasp, to reshape. Ilaria's mind met it not with resistance, but redirection. She didn't try to destroy it. She showed it the other path, the grid, the endless circuits, the ghost-light corridor where it could exist without taking from anyone. You are not alone, she whispered to it. You never were. Something shifted. The lights flared. A scream, not of pain but of release, echoed through every speaker, then cut to silence. Wexler collapsed back, unconscious but alive. Ilaria staggered. Elias caught her. Hey, still you? She nodded, dazed. Mostly. Do you feel different? Juno asked. I feel quiet, she said, for the first time in years. Later, as systems normalized and daylight returned to the canyon, they stood outside the outpost. The watchers were gone, retreated, perhaps satisfied that the ancient burden had passed to something new. Wexler remained unconscious but stable, free of the alien influence, and Juno was attempting to cook something unidentifiable over a solar grill. I think I've found my calling, he said cheerfully. Disaster cuisine. Elias leaned on the railing beside Ilaria. You sure you're all right? I don't know who I was supposed to be, she said, but I know who I am now. That's enough. Can't ask for better than that, Elias said, except maybe a better cook. I heard that, Juno shouted. They laughed, and for once it wasn't strained or cautious. So what now? Elias asked. Ilaria looked at the sky. We find others, survivors, people like us, and we keep going. He nodded. Together? She looked at him, long ears twitching in the breeze, and smiled. Please, I don't want to be alone. He reached for her hand. You never were.